The gift no one expected. The war was finally over. Captain Jalen stood in front of the command tent, his uniform dusty, his face tired. He had survived a brutal year on the front lines. Now, he just wanted peace. Rest. Silence. But peace was not what he got. Instead, a soldier stepped forward and dropped a cage at his feet. Inside the metal bars, a young alien girl sat quietly. Her silver skin was covered in dirt. Her white hair was tangled. Her body was thin, too thin, like she hadn't eaten properly in days. She didn't look up, she didn't cry, she didn't beg. "This is for you, Captain," said the outpost commander with a cruel smile. "A reward for your service. She was taken from the enemy camp. They trained her well. She'll obey anything." Jalen looked at the girl. "She didn't move. She's not human," the commander added. "Don't worry. Use her as you like." The nearby soldiers laughed. One of them kicked the cage just to see her flinch. She did, but she made no sound. Jalen's jaw tightened. He looked at the girl again. She looked so small, so broken, like a child left in the cold. "Take her," the commander said again. "You've earned her." Jalen's voice was calm, but firm. "No," the commander blinked. "What did you say?" "I said no," Jalen repeated. "I don't want a slave." Everyone around him went silent. The laughter stopped. Soldiers stared. No one refused a war gift, especially not a living one. "She's yours by law," said the commander. "Refusing her is an insult." "I don't care," Jalen said. "I didn't fight this war to own someone." Still, the cage was placed outside his room that night. Jalen sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the silent girl in the corner. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't moved since being brought in. She looked more like a shadow than a person. He brought her food. She didn't touch it. He offered her a blanket. She didn't take it. "You're safe here," Jalen said softly. No answer. He didn't try to force her. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't chain her, he just gave her space. For 3 days, she sat in silence. For 3 days, Jalen greeted her every morning with the same calm voice. "Good morning." She never replied. Outside, the soldiers whispered. Some called Jalen weak, others mocked him. "Captain refuses to touch his slave." "Maybe he wants to teach her how to read instead," one joked. "Waste of good flesh," said another. But Jalen ignored them. He cleaned the room. He left the food warm. He didn't expect anything from her. On the 4th day, something small changed. Jalen returned to find the plate empty. He smiled, but said nothing. The 5th day, she moved the blanket closer to her. On the 6th, she looked at him for 1 second. Just one. Then came the 7th morning. Jalen placed a small yellow flower on the table beside her breakfast. It was nothing special, just a wild flower he had picked during his morning walk. He left the room, as always, to give her space. But when he came back, she was holding the flower, not tightly, just gently. And for the first time she spoke. Her voice was hoarse, small, like someone who had forgotten how to speak. "Why?" That one word hit Jalen harder than any weapon ever could. He sat down across from her, careful not to get too close. "Because you're not a thing," he said. "You're a person." Her eyes, large and silver like her skin, watched him carefully. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But something inside her had shifted. She didn't lower her head this time. "You're free to go if you want," Jalen added. She said nothing. Then slowly, she shook her head. "No place to go," she whispered. He nodded. "Then stay here, as a guest, not a slave." Her hands trembled. The flower dropped to the floor. She stared at it, then back at him, and for the first time, her lips moved again. "Name?" "My name?" Jalen asked. She nodded slowly. "Jalen." She repeated it, almost like a song. "Ja-len." Then she whispered, "I have no name." He looked at her, gently. Then we'll find one. Together. Outside, the world still thought she was a gift, a tool, a thing. But Jalen had made a choice, and that choice would change both their lives forever. Jalen woke up early the next morning. He didn't hear movement, but he felt something different in the room, something heavy in the air. The girl was sitting in the corner again, just like before, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tight around them. But her head wasn't down this time. She was awake, watching. Her silver eyes met his for only a second. Cold. Empty. Like eyes that had seen too much and learned to expect nothing. Jalen sat down slowly across from her, careful not to make sudden movements. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. But she didn't run either. That was progress. He reached for a small bag and pulled out a soft cloth. "Do you mind?" he asked gently, holding it out. "Your face has a wound. I can help clean it." The girl looked at the cloth, then at his hand. Slowly, she shook her head. "No hurt?" she asked, voice barely more than air. "No hurt," he promised. Her fingers twitched. Then, hesitantly, she leaned forward. Let him press the cloth to her cheek. The skin was bruised and it must have stung, but she didn't pull away. He cleaned the cut in silence. She closed her eyes once, just for a moment, as if trying to remember how to trust. When he was done, he gave her a small mirror. She stared at her reflection like it was a stranger. The bruises, the dirt, the sadness. "I don't look like before," she whispered. "What did you look like before?" Jalen asked softly. "I was pretty," she said with shame. "They said, too pretty, so they sold me." Jalen's fists clenched. "You are still you," he said. "And you're not property." She blinked at him. "But you own me." "No," he said firmly. "I don't." Her breath hitched. "Then, what am I?" Jalen paused. "You're someone who needs healing, and if you let me, I'll help." She didn't answer, but her eyes didn't turn away. Later that day, he brought her soft clothes, not a dress, not slave garments, just a plain shirt and trousers. She touched the fabric like it was gold. "These for me?" "Yes," he nodded. "Clean, comfortable." She didn't ask why. She just took them, quietly walked behind a curtain and changed. When she stepped out, she looked almost new. Almost. She stood awkwardly, unsure of how to act. "You don't have to bow," Jalen said kindly. "I don't know what else to do," she whispered. He pointed to the chair. "You can sit." She sat. "I want to give you a name," he said after a moment. Her eyes widened. "A name?" "Yes. You deserve one. If you don't like it, we'll change it." She looked nervous, but curious. Jalen smiled gently. "How about Lyra?" She repeated the word slowly. Ra. Then she looked up. "Lyra," she said again, stronger this time. "That is me? If you want it to be." She nodded, just once. But it was enough. Outside, the whispers continued. "They say he named her," someone muttered at the mess hall. "What next? A wedding?" Another soldier laughed. Jalen didn't care. He brought Lyra books with pictures. Simple things, flowers, animals, stars. He found out she liked stars. She would stare at the sky through the window every night as if trying to find her lost home. One night he found her outside sitting alone. "You shouldn't be out without shoes," he said gently. "I like the ground," she whispered. "Feels real." He sat beside her. "They gave me away like garbage," she said suddenly. "To different masters. But no one ever asked what I liked." Jalen stayed quiet. He didn't push, he just listened. "I used to sing," Lyra said after a while. "Long ago, my mother said I had a soft voice, but I forgot the songs." "You'll remember," Jalen said. "One day." She looked at him, then down. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she said, voice shaking. "But I don't know how not to be." You don't have to figure it out alone, he said. I'm here. The wind blew gently. Her white hair floated in the breeze. Then, slowly, she leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time since she arrived, she let herself rest. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just breathed. And Jalen knew at that moment something had changed between them forever. The next morning, Lyra was gone. Jalen woke up with a sharp breath and found her side of the room empty. The blanket she had slept in was folded neatly. The chair where she often sat was cold. Panic flashed across his face, not because she belonged to him, but because he had come to care. He rushed out into the camp. The morning was still young, the sky painted with soft orange. Soldiers moved lazily between tents, carrying crates and sipping cheap coffee. Jalen scanned every face, every corner. No sign of her. Then he heard shouting near the supply tent. "Put her down," someone barked. Jalen ran toward the noise. There, at the center of the small crowd, stood a large man, Sergeant Darren, known for his temper and cruel jokes. He had Lyra by the wrist, dragging her like a piece of broken equipment. Her knees were scraped. Her face had fear written all over it. "She was snooping around the food crates," Darren growled. "Probably, trying to steal, dirty little thing. I wasn't," Lyra started, voice trembling. "I was just looking." Darren raised a hand to slap her. That's when Jalen shouted loud and clear, "Stop!" Everyone froze. Jalen walked straight into the center of the circle and stood between Darren and Lyra. "She's with me," Jalen said. "She's a slave," Darren replied, sneering. "She doesn't belong to anyone unless they take her. You haven't touched her. That means she's still free game." Jalen's fist tightened. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He only said one word, but with such force that even the air seemed to pause. No, it wasn't just a word, it was a wall, a sword, a shield. "No?" Darren scoffed. "You serious, Captain? She's not property," Jalen said. "Not mine, not yours. No one touches her." There was a silence, long and uncomfortable. One soldier mumbled, "Captain's lost his mind." Another whispered, "All this for a used-up alien girl?" Lyra stood behind Jalen, shaking, not just from fear but from disbelief. No one had ever stood for her. No one had said no on her behalf. She stared at his back like he was made of something stronger than steel. Darren shoved forward. "You gonna protect her now, Captain? Make her your little pet?" Jalen didn't move. "If I have to." Darren's jaw tightened, but something in Jalen's eyes made him stop. Then, without another word, Darren let go and walked away, laughing coldly. The crowd slowly broke up, muttering as they left. Jalen turned around and knelt beside Lyra. "Are you hurt?" She looked at her scraped knees. "Just a little." He gently touched her elbow. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." Inside the room, he helped her sit down and carefully washed the cuts. She didn't pull away, but she didn't speak either. Not until he was done. "You said no," she whispered. He looked up. "Yes." "To them," she added. "For me." He nodded. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would you do that? I'm not worth trouble." "Yes, you are." Lyra stared at him. "You don't even know what I've done. What they did to me." "I don't care," Jalen replied. "You're here now, that's all that matters." Her lips trembled. "They gave me as a thing, a gift. You were supposed to use me, like others did." "I don't use people," he said. "I protect them." Tears welled up in her silver eyes. "Even broken ones?" "Especially broken ones." She lowered her head into her hands and cried, but it wasn't the same kind of crying as before. These tears weren't from pain. They were from release, from being seen, from being defended for the first time in her life. Jalen stayed with her until she stopped. After some time, she looked up again. Her face was red. Her voice was soft. "Can I stay here? Just as Lyra? Not as a slave?" He nodded. "As long as you want." She gave a tiny smile. Barely there, but real. I've never been just me, she whispered. You will be now. That night, Lyra didn't sleep in the corner. She sat beside Jalen at the small table, eating with him. She didn't flinch when he moved. She even spoke a little, asked about the stars, about Earth, about his favorite food. Jalen answered everything with quiet patience. And as they sat there under the dim lights, Lyra realized something she had never believed before. One word no could save a life, and one man's kindness could build something stronger than chains. It could build family. The days passed slowly, but each one brought a small change. Lyra no longer sat with her head down. She began to stand straighter, to walk through the room with a little more confidence. Her eyes still carried sadness, but now, there was something else too, something Jalen noticed in quiet moments. A spark, small but alive. She began helping around the camp hut, folding her own blankets, sweeping the floor, even preparing simple meals. She still spoke very little, but when she did, it was with thought. Her voice remained soft, like she feared being too loud might break the peace. Jalen, on the other hand, had become the target of growing whispers. They say he eats with her now. He's teaching her to read. Captain's not just soft, he's stupid. Aliens like her don't change. They're made to serve, that's all. The soldiers mocked him in low voices when he passed. Some laughed behind his back. Others didn't even wait. They laughed openly. A few even tried to joke with him, directly. So, Jalen, one of them chuckled during mess hall. Is she your pet now or your girlfriend? He didn't answer. He just walked past, calm and silent. Another said, Bet she sleeps in your bed, huh? Must be warm at night. This time Jalen stopped walking. He turned to them slowly and spoke in a quiet, flat voice. She's more human than half of you. No one laughed after that, but the tension didn't go away. Some soldiers didn't understand how a man could show kindness to a slave. Some felt it was weakness. Others felt it was dangerous. Even Commander Threx summoned Jalen one evening. You're drawing attention, the commander said, sipping from a cup of bitter drink. Too many eyes on you. I've done nothing wrong, Jalen answered. You refused your reward. Now you're feeding it, clothing it, teaching it. That's not what the law expects of you. Jalen's jaw tightened. She's not an it. Her name is Lyra. Commander Threx leaned forward. You've forgotten what she is. I've remembered what she could be. There was silence between them. The air felt heavier. She belongs to the spoils of war, the commander warned. And spoils don't become wives. Jalen stood. Then maybe the war was fought by fools. He left the room without waiting for permission. That night, Lyra waited at the doorway, clutching a small cup of tea she had made herself. She looked up as he entered and instantly read the tension in his shoulders. They're angry again, she said softly. Jalen nodded. She looked down. Because of me. No, he said. Because they can't understand something simple. That kindness is not weakness. Lyra hesitated, then offered him the cup. He took it with a faint smile. You don't have to protect me from everyone, she whispered. I know, he replied, but I want to. She stood quiet for a while, then asked the question she had been holding for days. Why me? He looked at her carefully. You were given to me like an object, but I saw a person, a scared, hurt person. I know what it's like to feel like a broken tool. I've seen soldiers come back from war and never smile again. Some people just need someone to believe in them. Lyra's lips trembled. No one ever believed in me. You do now, Jalen said. That's enough. The next morning, the camp was filled with noise again. Jalen had assigned Lyra to help organize crates near the west side, away from the loudest soldiers. She worked quietly, carefully arranging supplies. But then came Darren again. He approached with two others, sneering. Look at her, pretending to be one of us. Lyra froze. She thinks she's better now, one of the men said. Another kicked a crate. Maybe she needs a reminder of her place. Darren stepped closer. You forget who you are, alien girl? Lyra looked at them, eyes full of fear, but she didn't run this time. Her hands trembled, but she stood her ground. Just as Darren reached out to grab her arm, Jalen's voice cut through the air like a blade. Touch her, and you'll lose that hand. Everyone turned. Jalen was standing with his rifle slung, but his fists tight. Behind him, several other soldiers had paused in silence. Darren scowled. You going to fight your own kind for her? Jalen walked up to him, close enough to whisper, She is my kind. Then he stepped between Lyra and the others, shield-like. This ends now. She's under my protection. Anyone who wants to hurt her will go through me. Darren laughed coldly. She's just a slave. Not anymore, Jalen said, and he led Lyra away without another word. Behind them, the whispers grew. But now they were different. Some laughed still, but others watched, and some began to wonder, could kindness truly change a creature made to suffer? Could a slave truly become family? Lyra woke up before the sun, for the first time not because of fear but because of peace. The dreams that once haunted her sleep were fading, replaced by something gentler, memories of warm food, quiet laughter, the sound of Jalen's steady voice reading aloud to her each night. It was strange, beautiful, almost too good to be real. She touched the small wooden box near her bedside. Inside it, folded neatly, was the cloth Jalen had used to clean her wounds weeks ago. He had thrown it away, but she had picked it from the trash quietly. It was the first time someone had touched her without hurting her. She didn't know why she kept it, only that it made her feel safe. Jalen entered the room holding a tray. I made breakfast. Lyra smiled shyly. She had started smiling more. Not wide, but soft, like her soul was still learning the shape of it. You didn't have to, she whispered. I know, Jalen said, but I wanted to. They sat at the table eating together. It was simple food, bread, eggs, and tea, but it felt like a royal meal to Lyra. No chains, no orders, just warmth. Later that day, Jalen brought out a small data pad. I want to show you something, he said. Lyra leaned closer. The screen flickered to life, showing pictures of stars, planets, and homes. Human homes, houses made of wood, children playing in grass, a woman tending flowers, a family sitting by a fire. This was my home, Jalen said, pointing at one picture. Earth. My mother planted those flowers. I helped her when I was a boy. Lyra's fingers hovered near the screen. It looks soft. It was, not perfect, but safe. I want to return there one day. Alone? She asked. Jalen looked at her. No, he said. Not alone. Her heart skipped. She didn't speak, but her eyes spoke for her. That evening, she asked if she could cook something for him. I don't know how well, she said nervously, but I want to try. Jalen smiled. Let's do it together. They stood in the small kitchen, her hands shaking at first but growing steadier as he guided her. They laughed when the bread burned, and Jalen didn't get angry. He simply helped her start again. I never had a home, Lyra said, washing her hands. Not even on my world. My kind doesn't have families like humans. Just duty. Function. I was made to serve. That was my only purpose. Not anymore, Jalen said. She looked at him. What is my purpose now? He wiped flour from her cheek gently. To live, to heal, to be who you are. No one gets to decide that but you. The next day, a child from the nearby refugee camp wandered close. Lyra had never seen human children up close before. The girl was dirty but cheerful, chasing a broken ball made of scraps. Lyra bent down and helped the girl tie her loose shoelace. The child smiled, then hugged her quickly before running away. Lyra froze, staring at her arms like they had been touched by something holy. She hugged me, Lyra whispered later. She wasn't afraid. She saw who you are. Jalen replied. Not what others said you were. That night, Lyra asked a question she had never dared to ask before. What is family, really? Jalen looked at her, thinking. Family, he said slowly, is when someone sees all of you, even the broken parts, and still chooses to stay. It's not blood. It's not rules. It's love. She repeated the word softly. Love. It felt foreign, heavy, but it warmed her chest. Do I have family now? She asked, looking up at him. Jalen didn't answer with words. Instead, he opened his arms. She hesitated, but only for a moment, before stepping into them. She buried her face in his chest and let the tears come. Not tears of pain, tears of healing. That night she sat beside him under the stars, her head on his shoulder, no longer afraid of touch, no longer expecting to be used. She whispered, "Thank you." Jalen turned his head toward her. For what? For giving me something I never had. A place, a name, a choice, a family. He didn't reply with words. He just held her hand. And for Lyra, that was the answer. She wasn't a slave anymore. She was Lyra, and she was loved. Lyra had just started to believe in peace. The days no longer began with fear and ended in silence. She laughed now, softly, quietly, but still, it was real. She walked freely through the camp, helping with supplies, stitching torn uniforms, learning how to use the datapad Jalen gave her to read and write. The soldiers who once laughed at her presence now lowered their eyes when she passed, unsure how to treat someone who refused to stay broken. But peace never stays long in a place built on war. It started with a ship landing without warning. Dark, unmarked. Sharp edges like a blade drawn in anger. Jalen saw it from across the camp. He grabbed his rifle immediately. Something about that ship felt wrong. It didn't belong to the military. It didn't fly like a trader's ship. It landed like it had come to take something, or someone. Before he could move, Lyra was already standing near the gates, frozen in place. 3 figures walked out, tall, armor dark and smooth, their eyes covered with red visors, and on their uniforms the symbol of a broken star. One Lyra recognized from her nightmares, her former owners, the ones who had sold her, the ones who would rather see her dead than free. She backed away slowly, her breath caught in her throat. Her knees began to shake. "Lyra!" Jalen's voice rang out like a warning bell. She turned just as he reached her, placing himself between her and the strangers. The lead man stepped forward. "We're here for the property," he said coldly. "One stolen unit of Class Zeta. Female, silver-skinned, registered under Trade Bond 1712. "She's not property," Jalen growled. "She's registered," the man repeated, voice mechanical. "And unpaid for. She must be returned." Lyra trembled behind Jalen, her voice barely a whisper. "That's my old master's crest. They came to take me." Jalen faced the soldiers. "She's free now, protected under my care. You can't take her." "She's still marked," the man replied. "The tracker under her skin says she belongs to the trade circle." "I don't care what a tracker says," Jalen said. "She has a name. She has a home. You'll have to kill me to take her." The men raised their weapons. Around the camp, soldiers gathered. Some aimed their rifles, others hesitated. Fear whispered among them. These weren't ordinary slavers. They were bounty enforcers, legally allowed to reclaim stolen goods. Commander Threx arrived, eyes wide. "What is this?" "They came for Lyra," Jalen answered. Threx pulled Jalen aside, whispering, "You can't fight this. Legally, they have the right to reclaim her. If you resist, it's treason." Jalen's jaw clenched. "I won't hand her over." "You'll risk your life for her?" "No," Jalen said. "I'll risk everything." Behind them, Lyra stepped forward even though her legs were weak. "I'm not going back," she said softly, but clearly. "Even if I die." The enforcers moved closer. Then something unexpected happened. A small group of human soldiers, the same ones who once mocked Jalen, now stepped in front of Lyra. Quiet, but firm. "She's one of us now," one said. "She helped my wounded brother," another added. "She's not going anywhere." The lead enforcer looked confused. "This is not your fight." Jalen raised his weapon. "It is now." The standoff thickened, guns pointed in every direction. No one breathed, and then, out of nowhere, Lyra stepped forward between both sides. "I'm tired of being afraid," she said. "If I go with them, I'll be nothing again, but if I stay, maybe I get to be someone." The enforcer narrowed his eyes. "You're not someone. You're a tool." Jalen stepped beside her, loud and clear. "No, she's family." The word hit like a hammer. Even the wind stopped for a moment. "You will not take her," Jalen said. The enforcers stared at them, then slowly backed off. "For now," the lead one said. "But she's marked. That mark doesn't go away." They returned to their ship. The engines fired. The ship vanished into the sky. Silence fell over the camp. Commander Threx turned to Jalen. "You just made enemies with the trade circle. They'll be back." "I'll be ready," Jalen said. "We both will." That night Lyra sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the place on her arm where the tracker hid beneath her skin. "Will they always chase me?" she asked. Jalen sat beside her. "As long as you wear their brand." She looked at him, calm and steady. "Then burn it out." He hesitated. "It'll hurt." "I've hurt worse," she whispered. Jalen took a deep breath, and carefully, with a heated blade and steady hands, he removed the tracker. Lyra didn't scream, she didn't cry, she only held his hand and smiled through the pain. The sky above the camp was filled with stars, cold, silent witnesses to everything that had passed. But tonight there was no fear, no shouting, no chains, only the sound of soft wind and quiet breathing. Lyra stood beside Jalen in a long robe, her silver skin now smooth and healed, her white hair braided loosely over one shoulder. Her eyes, once full of pain, now held something deeper, not just hope, but pride. Around them stood the soldiers who had once laughed at her. Now, they stood as guards, friends, and witnesses. The war was over. The base was being shut down. Many soldiers were preparing to return to Earth, to families, to forgotten promises. Jalen wasn't going alone. He stood next to Lyra in the courtyard, where he had once received her in a cage. There was no priest, no ceremony, no fancy clothing. Just him, her, and a firelight flickering between them. Commander Threx stepped forward holding a small book. "This is highly irregular," he said quietly. Jalen smiled. "Everything about us has been." Threx looked at Lyra and for the first time gave her a nod of respect. "Do you both agree to this, in front of witnesses?" Jalen turned to her. "I do." Lyra looked up at him. "I do," she whispered. The commander closed the book and said, "Then from this day forward, by your word, and by this witness, you are husband and wife." There was no applause, no music, only a long silence. Then Lyra reached up and touched Jalen's face as if she still couldn't believe he was real. "You've changed my life," she said. "You didn't rescue me from a cage. You rescued me from being no one." Jalen leaned forward and pressed his forehead gently against hers. "And you gave me purpose," he whispered. "Not as a soldier, not as a savior, but as a man." They didn't kiss. That would come later. But the connection between them was stronger than anything spoken. Later that night, as they packed to leave for Earth, Lyra looked around the room. She once feared. It had become a home, a place where her soul had been rebuilt piece by piece, not by force, but by patience. She walked to the small mirror on the wall. For the first time, she saw herself not as a tool, not as an object, but as a woman, a wife. A voice behind her said, "You look beautiful." She turned. Jalen stood in the doorway, smiling softly. I don't know how to be a wife, she admitted. You don't have to be anything, he said. Just be Lyra. That's enough. They boarded the ship together, two beings from different worlds, holding hands like they had always belonged. As the ship rose from the planet's surface, Lyra watched the stars stretch into long lines. She had spent her whole life looking at the stars, wishing someone would hear her cry. Now she was flying through them with the one who answered. When they landed on Earth, Jalen took her to a small cabin surrounded by trees, rivers, and the scent of real air. No alarms, no harsh lights, just nature and calm. Lyra stepped out barefoot onto the soft grass. It tickled her toes. She laughed for the first time in open air. Children from nearby farms waved at her. Women smiled. No one pointed. No one stared. She was just another wife, just another woman in love. Later that evening, she sat with Jalen near the fire. He handed her a small metal ring. I made it from my rifle barrel, he said. I don't need it anymore. This means more. Her hands shook as she took it. No one ever gave me anything before. Just for me. He slipped it on her finger. You're not just someone I saved, he whispered. You're the one I choose every day. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were warm tears. Healing tears. I was given to you like trash, she said, voice trembling. But you gave me back my soul. Jalen nodded. You were never trash. Just misplaced. They stayed there, under the stars, the fire warming their hands, and, as the night deepened, Lyra finally rested her head on his chest, no fear in her body, no sadness in her voice. I love you, she said. Jalen smiled, his arms wrapped around her like a shield that would never break. I loved you the moment you asked why. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life she slept without nightmares.